Armchair commanders, we call the shots. From our living room thrones where the action's hot. We're the generals of fiction, the masters of war. In silver screen battles with buttered popcorn. Armchair commanders, armchair commanders.
All right, welcome to the Armchair Commanders podcast. My name is John, and this week my partner in crime is out of commission. He is out partying to celebrate a bachelor party, but I'm fortunate enough to finally get a guest we've been trying to get on for quite a while now. We have Martin, who many of you, if you're checking out our channel for the first time, know him better as Bitter Steel and is YouTube's favorite Hearts of Iron YouTuber. Martin, if you want to say hi and tell the folks a little bit about yourself.
Hi. So, I've been introduced, I'm Martin, also known as Bitter Steel. I have been a police officer for 11 years now, and recently, last year, I decided to switch up careers and do more videos for YouTube, which turned out to be profitable enough to not have to do a day job. So that's been great. That's pretty much the gist of it.
Living the dream. Don't we all wish we could do YouTube? Although I'm sure that has its own set of stressors to it.
I am at the mercy of the whims of the almighty algorithm, and I have no control over what happens, who watches my video, and how much money I make. But hey, I don't have to clock in and clock out anymore, for now.
That's fair. Do you at least get like sponsors or stuff?
Every now and then, but the economy's not doing well, which translates into the advertising space not doing very well.
That's fair. I saw, you recently did a poll where you were starting to consider like branching out into a few other games. Is it like, did you get started with Hearts of Iron because that was like your favorite game and that's what you were enjoying? Or was that because that was like what responded well to the algorithm gods?
A bit of column A, bit of column B. It's a game I know fairly well, a game I enjoy. And at the time that I figured I want to start making videos, mostly I got annoyed by constantly seeing the same questions pop up. And I figured I'm just going to make a video on how to do this, and I won't have to respond to people with a giant wall of text. And I can just link the video and say, this is how it's done. I'm going to show you how it's done. Here we go. And it kind of snowballed, got a little out of control.
And now you got, was it like 250,000 followers or something like that?
35,000 subscribers as of a couple days ago. Yeah, almost at that 250,000.
Well, you're on your way. Personally, I'm keeping my fingers crossed that you'll do. Why did I just blank on it? Total War, but because that's always been a favorite of mine. That or maybe some Civ content, but. You do you.
I mean, I love Total War. I really, really do. The thing is, my shtick that people come for when I play Hearts of Iron is that I'm good at the game. I'm not that good at Total War.
That's fair. Unless you're like, watch me get massacred for the next 45 minutes.
Oh, yeah. Downside is like time investment. You have the regular schedule that you would like to keep up, considering, I need the income to sustain the family life, and deviating from that to make a video that may or very likely will not do as well is a big risk every time. And it's something I'm considering. I'm going to see where I can fit it in.
Yeah. So I guess it'd be a good time to kind of transition to our main topic of the day. Obviously, we brought you on here to discuss war movies. And this week we're doing the most recent adaptation of All Quiet on the Western Front. What made you go with that as your choice? I know I sent you kind of a big old list of things we hadn't done yet, and that was the one you went with. But what about that one stuck out for you?
It's a pretty impactful time period for my corner of the world, so it kind of draws the attention immediately, and I quite like the movie as well. So it's an easy choice from there.
When was the first time you got to see this film?
That specific version,
Yeah.
a couple months ago, I think, when it popped up on Netflix. I saw it at the theater. I saw the advertising for it, and I figured I'd like to watch that movie, but not at those prices.
See, I was the opposite because it came out in 22, um and I remember, at least here in America, Netflix was it's a Netflix original film, which I was very shocked at how well Netflix, like, for being a Netflix film, I was like, this is really good stuff. And like their stuff has progressively gotten better from that point. But like I feel like this was one of those like turning points for them where they went from like their original series and stuff, like, because they were doing that stuff well also. But this was like, no, we can compete with like the big boys as far as like movies go.
See, that's the thing with Netflix originals. You have either absolute garbage that just makes no sense, or you have a very true to form, true to history historical piece, and they can perfectly do both. Unfortunately, most of the first category, but like All's Quiet on the Western Front, definitely very high up there. Now, they did have a good source material to work with, but I also saw Siege of Jadotville. I think that's Netflix original as well. Very good historical, no bullshit, no extra fluff added on, just really good historical piece. And they can do that. They just somehow don't most of the time.
Right. It's like there's a joke going around where it's like you can go to Netflix with literally any idea and they'll produce it for you.
Yeah, pretty much.
But so here in America, you know, I saw the previews for it and I was so excited for it because, All Quiet on the Western Front, it's a classic piece of literature. We've reviewed the 1930s version of this film already, and that's, for me, that film is probably one of the top 5 war films of all time. So like I was very excited to see a modern adaptation of it. And I was fortunate enough because despite it being a Netflix release and it was supposed to be, straight to Netflix, what they did here in the States was it was about a half dozen theaters they chose to do a limited release screening the weekend before it was supposed to be out on the streaming service. So I went and I paid my outrageous ticket price to watch this on the big screen a week before everybody else because my city actually had one of the theaters that was selected to do this screening, and I'm very happy I did that because I've watched the movie multiple times, and like watching it on the big screen does not compare to the at home viewing experience. At least that's what I thought.
It's more bombastic, if you can see it in the theaters. You get more of that overwhelming sensation, especially in the action scenes, if you will. I think it's a movie that's it will do well in the right setting, because there is the action is oh my god, it's gruesome. It is overwhelming. It is well choreographed, I should say, but it's not superhero fights throwing fake punches. It is gory, it is messy, it is brutal.
Yeah, I think there's instances where a film can go too far, but this film definitely, like, it straddles that line of just right where it's like you can walk away from this film like feeling horrified and being like, "Oh my god, war is awful," but it's not so egregious that you're like, this was like, you don't walk away from it being like, oh, that was just a snuff film, basically.
Yeah,
You're
it's
like,
it's cautionary but not traumatizing.
yeah, it does a good job of demonstrating like, yes, war is awful, like, and that's the whole point of All Quiet on the Western Front from the beginning, was to demonstrate how awful war is and to be an anti-war piece, and what better way of demonstrating anti-war sentiment than being like, this is how awful it actually is.
And yeah, I think the first couple of scenes just set the whole thing up very nicely.
So you mentioned, this film covers a very impactful part of history for your area of the world. What did like World War One education look like for you, like when you were a kid?
Well, the educational system's not perfect, naturally, but Belgium was impacted fairly significantly during World War One. It has come to be a big part of the curriculum when we're talking 19th century. So there is a lot going on there. Mostly the specific campaigns of our little section of the front line. So the whole Western Front, that little tiny bit up north on the coastline that we didn't just barely manage to hold on to. They go very into detail there. How the fields were flooded, how the king never left his men. The good stuff. The good stuff. They don't talk about the horrible stuff all that much, but the war in whole is touched upon very generally. But then they talk more about what specifically happened to us, to our little corner of the world. We got shelled a whole lot.
Yeah, it's this is like, if I'm not mistaken, I think more artillery was fired during this war than World War II, I think. And like it's close.
I think the amount of artillery fired in a day, I think the only modern war to approximate those numbers is currently going on in Ukraine now, simply on the raw numbers scale.
Right. But I'm always blown away by the fact that like every year you'll see like an article that like comes out of France or something where it's like, I think it was like a year or two ago, there was this farmer who was plowing his field and hit like a phosphorus or like a mustard gas shell.
Oh yeah.
And he's like, okay, got a GTFO now. And when like the bomb squad comes in, they like start digging the area, and they found like an entire stockpile of shells of like just hundreds and hundreds of rounds.
Oh yeah, that's very common here as well. The area where the front lines used to be here, it is almost a monthly occurrence for a farmer to find either unexploded ordnance or small or larger stockpiles of artillery shells. It's so common that the ordnance guys, it's not a priority. They just tell the farmer, don't touch it, put some cones around it. We'll be around sometime next week, depending on what they find. They have you describe it over the phone, but usually it's considered to be not that special. But what is quite interesting, and a lot of people don't know, but is actually very dangerous, is the fact that we did not, or well, the Entente in general did not clean up very well afterwards, because for all the ammunition people find in the ground right now, there is somewhat something way worse just off the coast of Belgium, where we literally took all of the poison gas shells we had in storage. Well, we, as in the French, the British, everyone in the area just took everything they had in storage, decided, you know what, the safest thing to do with this is sink it into the ocean. What could go wrong? So the amount of ordnance currently off our coastline under a silt layer is I don't remember the exact numbers, but it were the equivalents of several times the national stockpile of the United States of America. So there is so much ordnance there, and it's not going to blow up, but the shells are corroding, they're rusting through, and those are chemical shells.
Yeah. Well, it's we had a guest on a long time ago. His main thing is he does a lot of different like World War II theme type stuff, but he did a video about how a lot of like sunken submarines are starting to cause problems because obviously they had very early versions of these giant, massive batteries because when they're submerged, they were battery powered. Well, these sunken submarines are now like leaking mercury and shit into the water. So it's no bueno.
Yeah, we got quite a bunch of garbage out there rusting away. It's usually not just the fuel, the massive amount of fuel that's going to leak out when something sinks, but all the other crap.
Yeah, and I guess it's one of those. And I'm not like a smart person by any means, but I couldn't even imagine like, let's say you decide to start cleaning up. I don't even know how you would even start or what even disposing of that stuff properly 100 years later would even look like.
I honestly don't know if they would have had the proper technology to do it safely, effectively at the scale required. But I do think they would have had better storage solutions than just dump it into the sea. What could go wrong? But hey, it's done now. And it's also virtually impossible to clean up now because everything's unstable and damaged already. Don't touch it. It's only going to get worse.
Right. I will say this movie, it's not like the biggest, and it's not even the it isn't the most standout scene in the film, but I really liked how this film approached the gas aspect of World War One in this film, because and granted, we're jumping to like right in the middle of the film, but we have our main characters who are sent out to go look for a group of replacements, and they're like, oh, they must have gotten lost along the way, and they just find them, and they don't even show really like the bodies that much, but there's a scene where they just have an entire stack of bodies, and they're like, oh, they must have took their masks off too soon, and that's the only alluding to the fact that they died from a gas attack. But it's like, I thought that was like a really good and as well as a powerful scene, because it's just like, oh yeah, here's 100 dead dudes who died because of a somebody made a oops a daisy, and they're like kind of shrug their shoulders and move on with their life.
It's the reality of of those people. That was their Tuesday, so to speak. For us, it's if I find 100 dead bodies in the next building over, I'm going to be horrified. However, these people have been through several years of war. They've seen everything and more. So this is not that impressive anymore.
Yeah, well, it's like, have you ever listened to? There's another podcaster. His name is Dan Carlin. He has a podcast called Hardcore History. Are you familiar with it?
I am not, but I'm interested.
I'll send it to you after this. But he does these massive, like, he releases like 2 episodes a year, but each episode is like 4 to 5 hours long. And he did a like 5-part World War One series, and it ended up being like a 24-hour long podcast covering the First World War. And one of the things that he talked about that really hit me, he's like, the Battle of the Somme in like 2 days lost more men than, like, more people died in like the first day of the Battle of the Somme than like the entire Napoleonic War combined, or something like that. And I was like, that is an insane number to like really wrap your head around.
Those are, yeah, I think like several 100,000 men just gone within hours. It's just because of the combination of new techniques and old strategies, I suppose. Very poor combination of leadership and military capabilities that were not fully understood.
So, what was your favorite scene in this film?
Favorite, as in, well, there's 2 that I found incredibly powerful. The whole thing where there's the opener with the I keep forgetting what the original guy's name was, but he gets shot. Anyway, he gets shot. Spoilers. And then you see the whole the whole track his uniform goes through being recycled before being handed out.
Oh yeah, the opening
And that
scene
fresh
is
recruit gets handed his brand new package. Oh, sorry, sir. Appears this belongs to someone else. There's someone else's name in there. And the officer rips it out and says that it's fine. It's yours. And there's like several dozen of those name tags on the floor already. Just how many people how irrelevant the individual soldier has become. That's very powerful scene for me.
I gotta say that as far as opening scenes go, that is a such a well done montage. Um, there's quite a few films I've seen that open up with kind of like a montage similar to that, but in different ways. But I think that one is probably the most powerful one I've seen in a film thus far. My wife, she attempted to watch this movie with me, and I told her, I'm like, hey, this is one of my favorite films. Like, I'd really like if you watch it for me. I have it for one of our upcoming podcasts. She's like, yeah, sure. And she made it as far as that opening montage where the guy dies and we see the journey of his coat. And she's like, okay, this is too heavy. I can't do this. I'm like, you know what? Fair enough. I do not blame you.
Yeah, it's a very powerful message, and it's very well done.
I will say this movie it leads kind of into probably like my one beef with this film, and that is the soundtrack. I think it's a great soundtrack, but in that opening scene, we're introduced to it's almost become a meme to this point, but it's the bomb, bomb, bomb. And like in that opening scene, I'm like, okay, yeah, this fits. It's like an artistic choice, whatever. But that like robotic 3 note like War of the Worlds sound randomly pops up throughout the rest of the film, and you're not expecting it. And I think I would like it or appreciate it if I knew when and or why they were choosing that sound effect at the times they did. Like the very opening scene makes sense to me. Got it. But it's weirdly interspersed in other parts of this film, and I have yet to be able to ascertain like what is this supposed to be alerting me to specifically.
I
So that's like my
I
one beef
feel
with it.
the only thing I can think of that it would be chosen for potentially is to represent or symbolize the fact that no matter where you are in that general area, at any time, at any day, you can hear that distant artillery. That's the only thing I think of that it could.
Maybe I maybe if I'm going to have to like start digging a little bit into it, and because I haven't really read any like cast interviews or like interviews with like directors or whatnot, and maybe the answer to my question is probably in there. I just haven't dug that deep yet.
Yeah, I have to be honest. I'm not that much of a film buff. I enjoy the movie and then usually go on with my life and have no further questions.
This just started out as a hobby for us, and we've become moderately popular, and I use that term very loosely, but I can confirm people do listen to this show. Why I don't know, but
P- Podcasts are one of the most popular forms of media right now.
I'm like, but it's that kind of recurring joke where it's like, oh, you're a 30-year-old who's having a midlife crisis, so you're going to start a podcast. And like, yeah, it's a joke, but it's also like it's true to a certain degree, because there's like hundreds of thousands of podcasts, and I don't know how anybody finds like smaller independent shows unless it's like you get referred or something.
Yeah, I don't know either. I know that there's a couple that I see pop up on my feed on, for instance, YouTube. There's a lot of podcasts out there recently, but sometimes when I'm in a certain ecosystem, maybe like for instance, I've been watching a lot of tutorials to paint Warhammer figurines. It's my new expensive hobby. And as a result, the algorithm figured out this guy is into that stuff. We're gonna throw him a podcast about it, and that's how
Is
I,
it
I
is
found
it
these
laying
things.
down the lore?
No.
Oh, I
I
was
think
going
it
to
was
say
Adeptus Ridiculous, basically discussing the lore in a silly fashion, or the other one is the painting phase where they just talk about painting, the mechanical act, or the artistry behind it. How do we do this about just painting small plastic little dudes?
Yeah, I'm kind of weird because so I like a game called Bolt Action, which
New
is
edition for you.
so I like Bolt Action, which is a World War II tabletop game. But because there's a lot of crossover in the stuff, like, you know, you're painting minis and it's a tabletop war game. So because I like Bolt Action, I get a lot of Warhammer suggested to me. And I don't know, it's even though I'm not necessarily into Warhammer itself, I love watching the painting videos. Like it's kind of ASMR ish to me, but visual.
I get to watch people who are way better than me do something I really want to do, but no, I can't.
Yeah. I mean, if I devoted as much time into actually painting as I did watching other people paint, I probably could be half as good, but why would I do that, you know?
It's so daunting because you see all the cool stuff they do, and you figure out, man, I want to do that, but I don't want to spend that much time doing it.
Yeah, like 2 hours for one figure.
Or 2 hours for a shoulder plate.
Right. It's like I got an army to do. I don't got time for this.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I don't know how much you know about the Warhammer side of things, but I play the Imperial Guard, which means I have so many dudes. I have so many dudes.
I'm loosely familiar with it. I started listening to this podcast called Laying Down the Lore. And it's a couple of British guys who literally they talk about like they go through like the codices and whatnot and basically tell you the actual like universe and story of the game. So I've started to get into that a bit. But I mean, if you were to ask me to name all the factions, I'd be like, I don't know, not there yet.
They got a giant pile of lore. They got like 35 years worth of lore to go through. So don't blame you. It's a big franchise. Meanwhile, you know, Bolt Action. Everyone knows World War II.
Yeah, Bolt Action's easy. And that's the other thing too, is like with Bolt Action, I can Google any battle I want, and there's my reference for like maps and stuff.
That is true. That is true. There is so much historical content about that time period, about those conflicts, that is just freely available. You can pretty much replay any battle you want to.
I've been wanting to get a game. It's not necessarily like Bolt Action or 40K, but it's a legacy game that's a bit more tactical. It's called Trench Club Legacy, I think, which is one of those things where it's like I would definitely like to try and branch out into like World War I gaming because I think it would be interesting. There is one game, God, what is it? Why can I not fucking find it when I want to? Wings of Glory. And it's a tabletop game similar to like the Star Wars X-Wing game, but you do it with like World War I biplanes and stuff.
Ooh.
That's another expensive game because it's like much like X-Wing. It's like one sock with camel is like $30, and I'm like, God, this is such a fucking investment. I did though. I've wanted to ever since we had some guests on a while ago, and they're from YouTube channel called Little Wars TV, and all they do is like historical wargaming, like tabletop stuff. Um, and they did an episode where they did Wings of Glory, and it was like 100+ airplane battle, and I'm like, this looks cool as shit, you know?
Oh, that looks sick. You know, like 100+ tiny World War One biplanes.
Yeah. Like they probably had a dozen people playing, and like it was like, you're a squadron commander, and like and like this person's just like 6 pilots basically, and it was a very impressive game to watch. Which makes me, it kind of brings me to loop it back into this film. I was kind of shocked to only ever see like one instance of aerial combat. Like I know this is a ground war focused film, but I found it kind of funny that the one instance of seeing aerial combat in this film is when our main character is walking to go to the bathroom, and like in the very distance you see just 2 airplanes chasing each other, and like it's such a inconsequential thing to him, and like you see one of them like taking hits and start to smoke, and like he's still just walking to go take a shit basically. And I was like,
Priorities.
man, this is some clever filmmaking, because I'm like, you're hitting on a lot of different things in this war, but like even though that's not your main focus, you're like, I'm going to still incorporate and acknowledge this thing happening in this war, but like it's just there.
I guess if you're just a regular foot slogger on a front that size, with air forces of the time being that relatively tiny, it would just not be something like, maybe the first time you'd see it, you're like, wow. And then you'd probably not see it again for a long time. And you'd hear about it, but it would be very separate from your reality. It's something that's there, but I don't know who these people are. I don't know what they're doing.
I think it would definitely depend on like what part of the front you're on. Because, you know, obviously some areas are more hot than others. But that kind of brings me to the other thing, though, is like probably one of the scene that you see pop up on YouTube the most, or the scene that gets referenced the most, like it's literally the film trailer scene, and it's when the Germans do their assault on the French lines, and they take control of the French lines, and they're like, haha, we've done it, we're taking a moment breather, and then
the counterattack.
The ground starts to shake, and you see dozens of World War One tanks, and I was like, one, that's cool as shit. Like, this is an amazing scene that they're filming. Like, I think it's awesome. But two, you don't ever see like tank combat in a World War One film. At least for me, I have yet to remember a film I've watched where tanks were a major component of a scene or the story.
I think it's because it's difficult to sell, simply because of how one-sided the tank war in World War One was. I think the Germans built a handful, the French and the British built many, many, many more. So the fact is that there are no glorious tank duels. There's just impervious tanks running over desperate infantry trying to do whatever they can. And if it makes for a very powerful scene, if that's the setting or if that's the message you want to send, the war is bad. It doesn't give you great heroics, considering, you know, if you want heroes, you want them to be the good guys. The good guys are the ones with all the tanks, so it can't really make any cool last stands here. So let's just focus on the infantry bits.
Right. Heroically running away is
heroically running away. But they do put up a good fight in that scene. They do they disable it? I think they disable it with grenades into tracks, and then a flamer in the side hatch.
Yeah, they take out one tank, but it's a very like fruitless endeavor because there's like dozens of them. But
yeah, it's pointless, but they did it.
They also combine it, so like that was just a horrific scene because first you have guys getting shot to death and blown up by these tanks. We get the very stereotypical, like, one dude getting run over by one of them, which was, that's another very graphic moment in this movie. But then it's followed up, like, the tanks are supported by flamethrower troops, and you're like, God damn, this is intense. Like, and one of our main characters meets his end by flamethrower in this scene, and it's super super graphic, and you're just like, holy fuck, this is bad.
It's gruesome. It's horrible.
And then you have all that happen, and then the film follows it up with and this is a completely a whole nother discussion, but one of the few things that this film retained from the book, which is the crater hole scene where our main character, fights to the death with a single Frenchman and then ends up, like, comforting him. Like, you have all the horror of the tank and the flamethrower scene, and then followed up by the personal one-on-one, like, trauma of, watching a guy slowly die. Like, it just, like, this film never stops.
It does come at you from every angle. The message is very clear. War, specifically this one, sucks so bad on every possible level. There is no glory here. There's just a whole lot of pain, suffering, and death for everyone involved on any possible level.
Yeah, it, even in slow or, like, quote unquote happy scenes, this film still finds a way to, like, punch you in the gut. There's the moment where, going back to the, Paul going to take a shit scene, he goes and sits down, and Katz is also there. And so they're, pooping side by side as good buddies do. And we find out that Katz can't read. So he hands him his letter. And so we get this very, kind of sweet moment where Paul is reading a letter from home, and, it feels like a very kind of innocent moment. And the letter ends with, "Oh, darling, I visited our son's grave. You know how much he liked for us to read him stories and whatnot." And you're like, God damn it, movie.
God damn it. Not now.
Give me 30,
right in the feels.
30 seconds.
Right
Just
in the
give me-
feels.
Yeah. Give me 30 seconds to feel good. But yeah, it's like that, or, like, even moments that are, like, triumphant in the moment end up being sad in the long term. Because, like, we get our moment where one of our characters absconds with a couple of French girls for an evening, and then he comes back with, like, a scarf from one of them, and the scarf becomes basically like a death note, basically, because it's like, whoever has the scarf currently is the next person that's going to die.
Yeah, it does appear, it seemed like that, yeah.
It very much is reminiscent of like in the original adaptation, it's like whoever has the cursed boots dies next.
It's especially with the scarf, it's also, they all want it because it reminds them of something that's not just this horrific war. It reminds them that there is something else there, but you as the viewer know that, oh, you're fucked, or you start to suspect it.
The only death I was not surprised by in this film was our character with the glasses. Like, because at the beginning of the film, he looks over to Paul and he's like, "We're going to stay together forever, right?" And Paul's like, yeah. I'm like,
foreshadowing.
I'm like, it's like, the second you said that, I knew you were going to die. So his death, that's probably the only death that did not hit me, was the guy with glasses. But also, it was early enough in the film that you didn't have the cumulative effect of all these terrible things happening in a row. which I think is probably a credit to the film because as our main character Paul is also being traumatized by event after event, like we as the viewers are like, God damn it, I don't know how much more of this I can watch because it's just like a Lemony Snicket's like series of unfortunate events
But they're
movie at this
bringing
point.
them at just the correct rate as to not completely desensitize you as the viewer into going like, yeah, all right, they're all dead. So this is what another another slasher movie. I know these guys are all gonna die. I no longer care. Just give me the action. They give you just enough background on all of them, enough of a view into their personality, into their lives, and then they snatch them away in the most horrific fashion possible at just the right rate that you don't see each of them coming, or that you don't immediately know that everyone's going to die until, well, you're at the end of the movie and, oh, he dies as well? Really? Come on.
What death impacted you the most?
I gotta say, I know it's maybe sounds dumb, but Paul at the very end, seconds before the end of World War One, he dies after having a several minute long montage of being a quote unquote badass soldier, gets stabbed in the back by a nobody who probably doesn't even realize what's going on. It's just gone, snuffed out, just like that. No matter how hard he tries, doesn't matter. Didn't make it.
That was a hard one. See,
Because
for me,
the whole scene is just he win. He wins every fight he gets in, and you can see that difference from the Paul you know at the start of the movie, the inexperienced youth, to the broken shell of a man that we have by the end. He knows what he's doing. He doesn't hesitate. He does it. He does it effectively. He does it well. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
I like it is a very powerful thing. I think for me it's a little muted just because if you're familiar with All Quiet on the Western Front, that's like the moment you kind of just are waiting for, I think, because no matter the adaptation, that is like the one guarantee is that Paul will be dead at the end of the film. I agree with like all your observations with his death. I think it's just one of those. For me, I was like, okay, when is it coming? You know what I mean?
Oh, so that's how they did it.
Yeah, because in previous adaptations or like in the like take the 1970s one, it's literally like he's reaching out because he like sees a butterfly and then a sniper kills him, and it's like, God, that's so stupid. Like the death that hit me the most was Theoden, because we have this guy. He's like the one positive person in this group. Like he has a goal. He's like, yeah, once this war is over, I'm going to be a ranger, like policeman. Like everybody's going to love me and give me free beer. Like I'm like it's going to be great. And to that, like it's a little bit of foreshadowing, like, oh, you're happy, so you're going to die. But he gets wounded, and it's very obvious he's going to have to lose his leg. And he's like, well, I can't be a policeman if I don't have a leg. Like they don't hire crippled policemen. And his death was like I was expecting him to die, but not in the way he did. Like it was so sudden and abrupt and violent. Like he killed himself with a fork. Like starts stabbing himself, and I was like, holy, like I was like, holy fuck!
That was dedication
Yeah.
to the cause.
I'm like, I've heard of some gruesome ways people have taken themselves out. Can't say stabbing oneself to death via fork is one of them. So that was a new experience for me.
Being in the field that I am in professionally, I can tell you, yes, people do this in the weirdest way possible, but it never stops shocking you. just how creative and inventive people will be.
I was
Yeah,
honestly, we
it
didn't.
was very powerful. You know, when they reveal the leg injury, you know, like he's done for. But you think he's gonna die of the wound or of the infection? You know, you see the circumstances, the dirt, the mud. You know that the
Or the
medical care
Star
is not the best. You
Wars,
figure he's gonna die a
or
slow,
like
agonizing death, but
the
not that
Star
way.
Wars, he's lost the will to live.
Yeah, yeah, something like that. Well, he
Yeah,
technically did,
yeah. In a way, yes.
but
Um,
also no.
I mean, you take that and then add it to the other part of this film that I'm very happy it touched on, because it's not something that really gets touched on in war films hardly ever, is the just the persistent like survival of even just finding food. Because in that same scene that Tjaden dies, like as he is actively stabbing himself with a fork, there's a guy 10 feet away who like scoots on over and steals his dinner. And and it's like, and it's a reoccurring theme through this film of how hungry these guys are, and like they're literally starving day by day
Germany
because
was starved into submission.
yeah, like we see it during the tank attack scene, because they are in the middle of attacking a front line and they come across a food supply and they're like, haha, fuck this attack, I'm eating some sausages, you know.
I'm
um
very well, happy is not the correct term, maybe, but I'm glad they include those things, absurd as they are, because they are so relevant to the overall setting. A lot of people forget that it was not the millions of soldiers that brought Germany to its knees. It was not the shelling, it was not the gas, it was not the flamethrowers, it wasn't even the American reinforcements. It was naval blockade and starvation that starved the country into submission. No more food for the people, no food for its armies. Nobody wants to fight if they're starving, and nobody wants to keep a war going if there's no food.
right. And it's like, even during like the letter from home that gets read, like that's a big part of it too, where it's like, hey, I've sent you some eggs and bread and whatnot, but do you think you could send us some money in return, type deal.
Yeah.
um you know, it's, and like care packages are part of every war, but like the difference between that care package and like a care package we think of today is like, if you were to send like a soldier a care package during like the Iraq war, that is like, you're sending them like luxury items to make their life marginally better. In World War One, the care package is like, no, he's probably going to die of starving if I don't send him a couple of loaves of bread in the mail.
Yeah. It's a very stark contrast with the out in today's military settings. The United States can deploy a Burger King anywhere in the world within 24 hours.
God, I wish I could do
Meanwhile,
that.
you can see that one of the biggest industrial nations in the world cannot even reliably feed its armies when those armies are all that is between them and absolute defeat.
It's, I love it because this film, it touches on a lot of things that don't get touched on, A, in war films a lot, and B, in World War One films specifically. You know, with another thing I think they did really well was the peace talks, or the armistice talks. Which I can't think of another World War One film that I've seen do like an armistice train car scene. But the fact that they are literally you know, the it, even though it's a calm setting, so to speak, it's still a super tense scene in the film. And I appreciated that they were able to shoot it in that way.
It's very well done. The attitude just radiates off the French delegation. It's very well.
Right. It's
Then
like,
sign is very very simple. Then sign.
don't let thousands more people die. okay,
Okay, then
sign the
sign.
paper. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it sucks because, a lot of I appreciate the fact because, a lot of the rhetoric that led to World War II was, oh, these people betrayed us and threw us under the bus and this, that, and the other. And the way they portray it is like, the guy who signs the papers, like you could see it was a great internal struggle for him because he knew exactly what it was going to do to his country. And it's like you don't have any other option than to end the war, but also like, okay, the war's going to be over, but it's starting a whole new hardship for your people.
He knows that the war is effectively over. All that's left is deciding how many more people die before it is done.
We also a scene that we do see more often in war movies is the crazy general who's like out of touch with reality. You know, he's talking to his aide, having like his men are starving, but he's having this big fancy dinner with just him and his aide at like a 20-foot long table by a fireplace. And he's like, yeah, there's going to be nothing for me to do once this war is over. At least you can make horse saddles. Like, it's like, I'm like, really? That's your concern here, not the thousands of people you're losing every day?
That's the Prussian attitude for you.
Prussia.
It is a pretty ubiquitous scene in in pretty much any World War I movie, isn't it? The incompetent general, aloof and without a care in the world, ordering millions to their deaths.
Right.
Both sides as well. The British had a lot of good examples of that as well.
Well, I think like nobody's exempt from it. Our end scene in this is the Germans doing a final attack because they're like, we're going to grab every inch we can before this war is over. And in like reality, the tables were turned. Like some of the last casualties of the war, there was an American casualty that occurred like 30 seconds before the end of the war because there was an American unit that's like, oh, this is our last chance to get some medals. Let's charge this position. And like there's accounts of like German soldiers like trying to wave them off, being like, no, stop, like it's almost over, don't do this. And they ended up having to fight them because they're like, okay, they're going to kill us. So it's
it feels so dumb, as the viewer, it's almost over. Just sit tight. It's all why are you doing this? Why? And you have those, like you described, the individual cases, but just as a nation, as a military command, you thinking, I got a few more hours. If I can take a big win, a final win, we have a better shot at the negotiating table. We have a stronger position at the negotiating table. Well, in reality, there would be very little negotiating, of course, as we now know.
Nothing like turning. I think that. See, this is where my American education system kind of fails me because as far as our education goes, World War I is a very limited topic in the American education system. It shouldn't be, but it is. Because for us, it's very much taught in the way of, yeah, those crazy Europeans were at war for a long time and then we showed up and they stopped fighting. Which is stupid. Like, yes, our reinforcements helped, but that's not why the war ended. It's a very self-centered way of looking at that conflict. But for Americans, once World War I is over, we go in, as far as education goes, we go immediately into like the Roaring '20s, everything's happy, and then we have our Great Depression, and we kind of ignore the fact that all of Europe is rebuilding while we're having our happy, fun party time in the 20s. So that's something that my education definitely lacks on is, what exactly the
I find it so funny as well because it is also not touched on that much in our education system. The 20s in Western Europe, not all that much happened except rebuilding, which is not that exciting. But in Europe, major wars were still playing out as the the Russian Empire is falling. The Soviet Union is starting to establish itself. They're at war with Poland. They're at war with Ukraine. There's massive wars going on that just got glossed over because it's not relevant to us.
Yeah, like the Baltic states are also trying to prevent Russia from taking them over, like post World War One. Like, there's a lot of stuff going on.
It's a very interesting time period, that first part of the 20th century. And they are, as they say, interesting times that I wouldn't definitely not want to live through.
And yet they're like, I don't know if it's like a thing in Europe, but like, over here costume parties are a thing everywhere, but a very popular theme or costume party thing here in the States is Roaring 20s, because it's like, we're going to dress old timey, but this is the happy, fun, drinky time
Cool
of our history.
Old timey, where everybody's
Yeah.
happy.
Like the Great Gatsby, haha. And it's like, that doesn't sound fun to me, if we're being honest. Like,
That's really not a thing here. That is
it's
not. In that time period here is very much still marked by lowly, poorly educated rural folk trying to rebuild their shot to pieces farms.
So I guess, is like costume parties like a big thing at all where you're at?
I mean, it's starting to pop up through the Americanization of the culture. So we got Halloween flowing in now, but mostly
Okay,
for the
but
kids.
that's more Halloween's more of a general holiday, I think. But I'm just trying to imagine like.
But you have the fancy dress party, as in the white shirt, the nice pants, the good shoes, but not specifically Roaring 20s themed. Well, occasionally, I guess at if a club does a big event with that specific theme in mind, but it's not that ubiquitous.
Here we have like costume parties for like everything, and in fact, where I live here in Denver, every year we have this massive event. It's called the 1940s Ball, and it's held at one of the smaller municipal airports, and it's this big swing jazz dance that's held in a hangar, and like they bring in like World War II airplanes, and it's a car show, and like all the decorations are done up like it's a USO traveling show type deal. So like people here, like we love themed like kind of historical period parties. It's like that, or like we'll have fucking flower power like hippie parties where everybody dresses like it's the 60s and 70s.
Very fascinating. No, not really. At least not in Belgium, no.
Okay.
But we are a very reserved people.
It's was that joke from the Austin Power movies? There's only two things in this life I hate: is people who are intolerant of other people and the Dutch.
And the Dutch. I must very strictly stress that I am Belgian and not Dutch, nor am I French. I am Belgian. Or in between those two, I am neither.
I'm sorry. It's, as an American, I gotta say a lot of European countries kind of flow together for me. But I'm sure
it's
a lot of U.S.
sense.
States probably flow together for you. So
you have some with very easy to remember shapes, though.
Yeah.
And then you have all those on the East Coast. I have no idea which is which, except for Texas.
I live in America, and I can't tell you all the East Coast states. So, yeah, no, like I get it. Like the recognizable states is like California, New York, Florida, and Texas.
I mean, I'm sure you have geography class where you're given a blank map, fill in the states, correct?
Yeah.
I mean, we have the same thing, but they just give us a map of Europe and just fill in the countries.
Yeah, for our geography class, we have to learn the 50 states plus their capitals. But that kind of neglects the rest of the world. So, although I did have to do one of those maps when I took Spanish in college. So, but it was just South American countries.
Oh God, I could not put all of those on a map though. I know Brazil. That's easy. That's the big one. But I stare at maps professionally, and I could very likely not match up all those in Latin America. No, probably Mexico. Yeah, but between Mexico and Colombia, that entire string, no idea what order they go in.
What is so for Hearts of Iron? What do you think is like the weirdest starting position you've ever chosen for a game?
Depends. If I play, I always want to pick the weakest or the underdog in any situation, because that offers the most interesting challenge. But if we're talking just the base game, the country that nobody knows, Tanatuva. No,
What?
nobody knows what Tanatuva is. I think it was eventually absorbed by the Soviet Union. Pretty much a small satellite republic that they snatched away from either Mongolia or the Chinese Empire before it fell apart. It is tiny. It is insignificant. It has no natural resources, no population to speak of, no military power to speak of, and your goal, there's an achievement for it. Your goal is to seize, I think, how much is it? Pretty much all of the Turkestan area from the Soviets. It is so interesting because the only way to do it is to cheese every mechanic the game has and use it in ways that they were absolutely not meant to be used in, just to succeed. I found that incredibly funny. The only way to play is to not play as they intend.
See, I tried Googling it and I definitely did not spell it right because what I got as a result was one of the Aztec sun gods. So
It's let's see. It's TANNU, People's Republic of Tuva, also known as Tanatuva.
there we go. Oh, they have a pretty sick flag though.
I mean, it's the classic Soviet flag, red with something on it.
Yeah, they got like a horse lancer on it.
They do go hard. Those I think partially Mongolian. Yeah,
I'm sure there's Mongolian influence. I mean, a lot of the countries that border Russia and like Afghanistan stuff have that influence.
I think that's an example of why I like to play Hearts of Iron 4, because you can make, if you're good enough at the game, you can make anything happen. Any what if you can game it out. What
Right.
if how can US Germany win World War II? Well, because the game's super unbalanced quite easily once you figure it out. But that kind of thing, it keeps me coming back. Just new challenges, new what ifs, new ideas. I quite like that.
Well, I think it's about that time that we rate this thing. Usually, we don't do stars around here. We like to be a little original, so we try and do something that's relevant to the film on a 1 to 5 basis. Personally, I think a good metric to rate this on. I know I said I wasn't affected by it, but I think it's a good exemplar of the film, which is our first character death is our character with glasses. And it really kind of sets the tone that like the rest of the film is just going to be about death. So I think 1 to 5 smashed glasses.
Oh, good. Can we do half glasses?
Absolutely.
I mean, I am a big enjoyer, let's say, of these war movies, these kinds of movies. So I'm a bit biased. I would go with 4.5 smashed glasses. I would take off marks for the sound design, not always the greatest, and some of the cinematographer choices, not the best. Sometimes I maybe my TV just sucks, but some of the dark scenes were just too dark to really make out what's going on. But I love this version of the movie. I know it deviates from the book. Don't care. Good movie.
Yeah, that was something we didn't touch on a whole bunch. I think that's my. I know a lot of people complain about it deviating from the book, but like you, I also don't care. The point is, this movie accomplishes the same goal that the book did. It tweaked the story a bit. It took some creative licenses, but for the most part, it followed the path of the book. So that doesn't upset me. I think this is as good as a war film can get. This is probably, I want to say this is probably like the best war film that's been made in like the last 10 years, in my own opinion.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. If your goal isn't to sell people to recruiting officers, this is your war movie. This is the anti-Top Gun.
Yeah, we still need to do that movie someday, but we've been holding off.
New one's good. The new one's good, but you gotta turn off the brain though.
It is. We were like, we want to do it, but we're also like, oh, we need to find like a fighter pilot to join us or something, because like, how do you have a Top Gun movie without like a pilot joining you? And we shockingly have not found a pilot who wants to risk their career to talk to us. So
why not? For internet clout. People do anything for internet clout.
Yeah, it's only Navy SEALs that want the internet clout right now. Probably pissed off all one of one Navy SEALs who actually listen to this, but whatever. For me, the only thing I have to hate on this or dislike is literally the thing I mentioned about the bomb thing. If it had just been in the beginning of the movie, I think this would have been a perfect film. And it's only because of my lack of understanding of why they put it in other places, I'm going to ding it. I also, as good of a movie as this is, I don't want to rate it at the same level as the original 1930s version of the film. For that one, I gave it a 5 out of 5. But this is so damn close for me. I would give it 4.9. So like 4 glasses, and then the 9th glass
just a little bit chipped.
It's like just like one little glass shard is missing. That's it.
I can respect that.
It is.
I can see it.
It is an inch away from being a perfect film for me.
It does what it sets out to do, and it does so beautifully. And not only that, it preserves the message and is a good movie in its own right.
Absolutely. I appreciated that for a foreign-made film, the fact that this won as many Oscars as it did, like, I think, like, I'm happy for it that it did that. Like, I don't think foreign films get enough credit in the American movie market as they should. I mean, we've definitely seen kind of an uptick in popularity when it comes to like Korean-made films, but I'm happy that a foreign-made film did as well as it did here.
It does help that it had the backing of Netflix's budget, which, you know, for a movie of that scale, it's, if you're going to be authentic, you're gonna have to open your wallet and spend.
No, this was not a cheap movie. And it shows. Like there's not a point in this movie that you're like, oh, they took a shortcut on this. Like it is an across the board good movie.
It is very well. I don't know if what word I use for it, but the props are on point. Uniform design, all of that stuff. They put money into it, and it paid dividends. I don't know if you've seen any of the other Netflix original stuff. They're historicals. Like, for instance,
I've seen quite a
they had like a mini series on Alexander the Great recently. Did you see any of it?
I didn't see the Alexander the Great one, but I have seen some of their other historical miniseries things where they take more of the documentary route with it.
Yeah,
the last one I watched was about the samurai,
and I didn't see that one specifically, but
I thought that was very well done.
Like the one I mentioned, Alexander, just you can tell they cut so many corners in the costume department that if you're even the slightest bit interested in history, it just immediately turns you off.
It's like, what'd you do?
That man's not dressed properly.
Why is he wearing a costume from Spirit Halloween?
Didn't they wear that one in a different series? I recognize that chest piece, and you go back and yes, they reused it.
Anyway, it's all ancient. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's just 100 guys, some spears in the backdrop, but they, you can tell they put attention to detail in it, and they didn't. I guess somebody cared what it cost, but they spent the money needed to make it happen. I'm very glad they did because it provides so much more of an atmosphere.
Right. So we like to compare our rating to Rotten Tomatoes.
Oh God.
And I'm happy to see I don't disagree with Rotten Tomatoes this time.
Which one though?
Both the thermometer and the audience score gives this film a 90%.
Okay, good.
I personally I think it should be higher than that, but for Rotten Tomatoes, that's I think I'm not mad at them scoring at this. For what they have scored things in the past, I will take that.
I can see myself agreeing here. Yes, Rotten Tomatoes is a bit hit and miss, but yeah.
I don't know. Are you familiar with a film called Sands of Iwo Jima?
I am not. No. I'm gonna Google
So
that.
it's a John Wayne film. I hope you're familiar with John Wayne.
John Wayne.
Yeah. So John Wayne, in coordination with the Marine Corps, made this very rah, like Go Team USA type World War II movie about the Battle of Iwo Jima. And really, it should be called the Battle of Tarawa because that's 2/3 of the movie, and then the Battle of Iwo Jima is like 10 minutes. But it is as 1950s of a film. Like, it's very much like America, USA #1, like military backed, as 1950s a film as you can get, and has John Wayne in it. And Rotten Tomatoes gave that film 100%. And don't get me wrong, it is an important film, and I even think a good film, but in no way, shape, or form is it 100% film.
It is era appropriate.
Yeah, a recurring joke we have around here is like whoever the enemy is when we watch a John Wayne film. It's like, this film was so accurate. For like a moment, I believed that John Wayne hated Indians, or I believed John Wayne hated Japanese people.
It's
Like
method acting.
Right? I believed him when he said those racial slurs.
Ah, glorious cinema.
Right. So if you have any social medias, obviously you have your YouTube channel. If there's anything you want the people to know about, or any projects you got coming up, the floor is yours.
I make a video on Hearts of Iron or similar content if I ever get around to it every Saturday. Put it up on my YouTube. That is Bitter Steel. And that is about it, because I am still not showing my face out there. I'm still hiding who the man behind the channel is for the most part, except for what I said at the start. So if you figure it out, don't tell anyone. But yeah, I did want to thank you for letting me come on here. We finally got this settled. For a hot second there, I thought this was never going to happen, considering we've canceled several times now. I'm glad to have finally done this. It was enjoyable.
I deeply apologize for that.
Like I said, unless you cook that bird, I don't think I don't think you need to apologize for that.
For our listeners at home, without going into too much great detail, the last time we scheduled to do this episode, there was an incident near the area I lived where there was a massive wildfire that burnt 1,200 acres, and it was kind of a last moment, hey, I can't really do this at the moment because the town is about to burn down. So it was a bit extreme. But I appreciate you understanding.
It's the best excuse I've heard so far, so it's at the top.
At least I backed it up with receipts, because I remember I'm like, hey, I have to cancel, and then I just sent you the active news article, town is burning.
Oh yeah. I opened that link. Was okay. This man does not joke. Okay, I would have accepted any apology, but any excuse, but the receipts were very interesting to say the least. Yeah.
But I'm glad we finally got to work this out. So for our return listeners, thank you for joining us. Go check out Martin's channel on YouTube, Bitter Steel. For any of our new guests who have come over here because they've followed the legend himself of Hearts of Iron, I hope we can have you come back sometime and listen to some more stuff if you enjoy war movies. If you want additional content from us, you can find us on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Discord, all those good places under Armchair Commanders. Please leave a review. The stars do matter. Until next time, I've been John. Martin, thank you again so much for joining us.
My pleasure. It was very fun.
And we will catch you all later.